All right, you ready? 3, 2, 1. Welcome.
Okay.
And welcome to Slightly Off Target on this Wednesday, October 6, 2021. Bo Wilson alongside Jeff Hart and Seth Chapman, our producer, as always. Welcome in, guys. How's the world treating you today?
Pretty solid. Not too bad.
Did you put your floats on to come into work?
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
I did. Yeah. The ducks passed me on a raft.
Yeah.
It was that wet. Even they were like, I'm done with it.
You and the ducks at your
Oh, there's like 70 of them now.
Your
when we
home
moved
place?
in, when we moved in, there was like 15. Now there's like 70.
So you and the ducks, are you getting along?
Oh yeah. Well, and every now and then
Do
they
you pet the ducks?
I try.
Do you
but
go up to the ducks and go
we
like,
try,
quack,
but the mama
quack, quack, quack?
the mama ducks are really mean. They hiss
About
at
to
you.
say, have you ever seen a duck attack somebody? Man.
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
That's what I was kind
well,
of hoping would happen there.
They do like a they come at you like an armada at your spot. And there was one day Stacey was
That's
trying
a
to
car, right?
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Stacey was trying to turn on the air fryer, and there was like 6 ducks between her and the air fryer. And every time she took a step, the mama duck came at her. Stacey just runs back in. She goes, "I just have to go wait and do my food when
That's
they leave."
because the duck was afraid you'd throw it in the air fryer. Yeah.
It was pretty meaty, I will say. It was
yeah.
pretty nice duck. But
Well,
we couldn't grab it.
Regardless of that, a lot of stuff happening in the sports world, especially on the local level. The Georgia High School Association has been meeting, and reclass has been in their sessions. A lot of things have happened. The multiplier is way up now to 3.0.
Would you say it's been contentious a little bit?
I would say it's been contentious a little bit, just a little bit.
I mean, when you got like scores of schools saying, "Hey, we're just going to leave,"
Yeah.
I would think that you've ruffled some feathers somewhere. But
Speaking of ducks.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
it always comes back to the ducks.
Back to the ducks.
Always
so
comes back to
mainly
the
the private schools and then city schools are not pleased with the 3.0 multiplier because it does affect them the most. And speaking of city schools, we've got Adam Lindsay from Gainesville High School on the show with us today. Coach, how's it going? What's up? What have you been thinking about all of this GHSA reclass stuff?
It's been interesting, hasn't it? I mean, there's a lot going on, a lot of talk, but it's unfortunately what we go through every 2 years. So it's just another cycle.
And when you and I we've talked before, you brought a great proposal a couple of years ago to the table that didn't even get looked at. I don't think. But now they've just
we loved it anyway.
Yeah, no, it was a great proposal.
I thought it was a great proposal.
But now they've pushed it up to 3.0 on everybody with basically no restrictions outside of single A. You can move up as many classes as the multiplier takes you, and it is shifting some people around, or it will shift some folks around. What's your thoughts on that?
It's going to be I think 3's good. I mean, I think it at least gives a starting place. Obviously, I think they wanted to find a way to, lack of a better way to put it, to attack the private schools, and I guess the city schools as well. Fortunately for Gainesville, we don't have as many out of district students as people think we do. So the multiplier is not going to really affect us in the long run. But when you look at some of the private schools that have 99% of their enrollment is out of district, and you've got some of the other city schools that are 25-30% of their students are out of district. It's going to have a huge effect on them. When you look at some of the schools, they're going to get pushed from 4 or 5A up into 7A. I think that's a little bit extreme, but I'm also interested to see how it plays out. I mean, I think those schools can compete in 7A. I don't think they're not going to get all of the success that they have had in the past, which is, in my opinion, not a bad thing. That's part of my whole, competitive balance, proposal back that I proposed 2 years ago, was to kind of level out some of that and put all the best schools together. And when you do that, not everybody can win everything. And I think that's where a lot of these schools that are used to winning at everything are going to be put in situations where they're not going to be they're not going to win everything. They're still going to be competitive, no
Well,
doubt. So
well, you mentioned teams moving up, multiple classifications. We've made our own projections on Access WDUN based on some numbers that were handed down through the Georgia High School Football Daily, through the GHSA. And so let's take a look at what we predicted would be your region. As it stands, you guys would actually move down to Class 6A. And then you'd have a team like GAC, who's playing in 3A right now, would jump all the way up into 6A, and we projected them in your region because when you look at the other schools and how you would have to, put teams in regions, that's really the only place. There's some good natural, you got GAC and Lanier and Shiloh, Central Gwinnett, DeQuil, and Beaufort, all in Gwinnett County, and then there would be y'all. How do you see that when you look at the competitive balance?
I think it's better than where we're at right now. I mean, we are, having to go into 7A and into Forsyth County. We're not playing apples to oranges, in that region with them. So it's certainly been a difficult last, year and, couple of months to be in Forsyth County. So, there's some of the schools in that 6A region that doesn't overly excite me to have to be with, but it's better than where we're at right now.
Yeah, I wonder who that could be.
Well,
hey, make no bones about it. We all know who the big green monster is.
Right.
It's okay. I mean, they've done an amazing job, so kudos to them. But I also think they're one of the schools that could go to 7A and be extremely competitive across the board.
I do too.
But but I think when you start talking about any of these projections, and certainly the list that's been put out, I think everybody has to remember those are taken off the spring FTE numbers. Right. And I would love to take spring FTE numbers because, at Gainesville High School specifically, we'll drop somewhere between 250 to 300 kids from fall to spring. Right. And we just do every year. So those numbers just have to be, everyone has to remember those are projected off of, last spring, and they're not overly accurate. And I think everybody's numbers are up this year, but I think the interesting thing when you look at those numbers, and I know everybody wants to know where they're at, and I do too. I certainly will be checking the DOE website to see when that cutoff the last cycle was right around 2,100, and they've got it projected at over 2,500 this time.
Wow.
For 7A. So I mean it's a huge jump, but it also shows, what that 3.0 multiplier does, because it takes 11 schools that were not in 7A and puts them in 7A. So keep saying it's interesting because it's going to change. It's going to change 100 times between now and they finally post it. And even when they do post it, you're going to have schools that are going to appeal to get out of it.
Right.
So which is what, if we ended up in 7, we would appeal as well. Right. So you don't know how much it's going to change over the next month or so.
Well, Coach, that's what I was going to ask you about. And folks, the numbers that we've used are numbers that the Georgia High School Football Daily releases in their morning newsletter. They basically gone in, they took the 2019 percentages of out of zone. They've taken the 2019 private school enrollment numbers and the spring 2021 public school enrollment numbers to form these classifications to kind of give an idea, give some speculation, give some clicks and reads and all this kind of stuff. And we have taken this and basically thought, okay, let's see if we can make our regions. But these numbers, I mean, talking to other area coaches and ADs, some of these schools, could potentially end up, let's take North Hall, for example, in, 3A. They're the highest in this GHSF projection. They're the highest 3A team. They could potentially bump up to 4A. So, I mean, this is not the final number by any means, folks that are watching or listening to this. But, I mean, do you see more 7A shifts there from 6A or from 5 to 6 into 7?
It's highly likely. And when you come down to it, think about it, there were 24 appeals to move classifications last year, and 17 of them were approved. And I would bet that number of appeals will at least double this year. Right. Because you'd have to think that, and when you look at, and I just don't have all the names off the top of my head, but like St. Pius and Woodward that are getting, bumped 3 and 4 classifications, I think they've got a good argument to say, like, hey, I can see jumping 2 classifications or even 3, but 4 is a whole lot,
Right.
Right.
There are other city schools and other public schools that are in that situation. So,
Right.
you don't know what's going to happen. Certainly when you get in front of an appeals board at GHSA. So it just, it's a lot of good conversation and fun things to talk about,
Right.
but you just don't know what's going to happen when it all boils down to it.
Right. Well, part of this, rumors coming out of Thompson and the meetings and things like that, but that the private schools were going to just jump ship from GHSA en masse. How would that be a good thing for the GHSA overall, or a bad thing in your opinion?
Personally, I think it's a bad thing. I think the private schools have a place. I think that so it's multi-layered here. What I worry about from the GHSA standpoint is, let's be honest, where do all of the state legislature's kids go to school?
Mm-hmm.
They go to school at private schools. So if they get really upset, who's coming to fend for them? And that brings the state legislature, which I've been adamantly against having them involved with the GHSA in any capacity. It brings leave. I think we end up getting state legislatures trying to stick their finger back in everything that happens with the GHSA. So from that standpoint, I think that part's bad. But also, I think that the private schools have something to offer. I think having them involved in what's going on with public schools, I think is a good thing. There are a lot of really good, talented teams and players and coaches at those schools. And I would hate for them to leave and go to the GISA. Honestly, I don't think it's going to happen.
Right.
I think that they are trying to create as much noise as they can to see if they can make something happen. But I don't see, personally, I just don't see it. I don't see them leaving. I think they lose a lot. I think they'll have kids in their building that'll say, I don't want to go just play against private schools in the GISA. I want to play against the best schools in the state. And that's not going to happen if we're in the GISA. I think they could end up losing kids over it. So again, just another element that could be very interesting to see how it plays out. But I see them sticking around. It's funny because I know Dr. Kurt Miller, who's the chair of the reclass committee, proposed a reclass proposal that would basically take all the private schools and put them in their own playoff system for postseason. And the private schools were adamantly against it. So for them to now talk about leaving the GHSA, going to the GISA, where they would then just all be in their own class together.
Yeah.
Well, you could have agreed to do that in the beginning of the GHSA and get the same thing out of it. So I don't see really what they get out of it, in my opinion, other than just getting away from the GHSA.
Well, you were talking about 24 appeals last time, 17 granted. Now 3.0 multiplier, to me, just watching the reclass committee meet and watching the meetings and all kinds of stuff, are the minutes coming through from those meetings, it seemed like to me that the 3.0 multiplier was doubled down by the executive committee. Now, if, say, St. Pius comes in and makes that appeal and they drop them back down, what is that going to say about this multiplier? Does it really matter?
Well, nothing really matters when you get in front of an appeal board, to be honest. You just, and that's, having watched what happened last time, I may not be 100% correct on this one, but I know there were 17 that were approved of the 24. It was those first 7 that got denied.
Mm-hmm.
And then the first domino fell and that first one got approved. And then basically after that, they approved everything after that.
Right.
So, it's one of those things where unfortunately I don't necessarily, I'm a big proponent of, you put the rules in place and you follow those rules. And if whatever happens, you got to deal with it. That's the situation we're in. Y'all are, because when it comes to classifications, they take the top 10% and put that in 7A. It works out to be number 47.
Yeah.
If we end up being number 47 or number 48, we got to deal with that. That's just kind of what we're but everybody's got an exception to the rules, so the appeals process comes into play, and it's a matter of how many people's heartstrings can you pull on that committee and to get your way. So Unfortunately, I don't necessarily trust what will and won't come out of the appeals committee. And again, I go back to I can feel it for a St. Pius or a Woodward that's getting pushed 3 and 4 classes. That's a lot. And when you're talking about they're a school of 1,000 to 1,100 kids, it's going to be potentially lining up against Mill Creek at 4,000 kids. Yeah. There's a huge difference about that. Now, I will always say that those schools are good enough they can compete with those kids, and they always want to bring the safety thing in, which I don't want to turn a blind eye to that, but their kids still get in the weight room and bust their butt every day, and they're pretty dadgum good football programs. They wouldn't think twice about scheduling some of those guys in a non-region game. They're just talking about having to play them every day now. So I don't necessarily follow the whole safety piece of it. But they've got to figure some of that piece out. Sorry, right. Left field.
All right, Coach. Well, we'll let you go back to do what you're doing. We just want to get your opinion on what's going on and what's happening, and potentially dropping down to Class 6A for the next reclass cycle.
Thank you very much for your time.
All right, man. Adam Lindsay, Gainesville Athletics Director, talking about this new reclass. And, he's right. Wherever the cutoff's going to be for 7A, then everybody else gets pushed down. And again, you see how things work that way every year when the GHSA gets here. I still will say this, though. If you're going to vote for a 3.0 multiplier, and you can see it now, you can see it through all the minutes of these meetings, and it's an attack on the private schools, and then you allow them to appeal.
I think it was also an attack on the city schools.